Hi everybody, I'm Den Haring. Welcome back to my channel, Fish Den 365. It's Topwater Tuesday, and today it's all about the Heddon Zara Spook. Okay, the first thing to know about the Zara Spook is there's all different sizes of this thing, right? You have the Super Spook, the Super Spook Junior, there's Zara Spook, the Zara Puppy, there's all these different sizes. But for the sake of simplicity in this video, we're only going to be talking about the original standard Zara Spook. And this is a lure that's been around a long time, and I really like it. It's a strictly walk the dog lure where its whole action is imparted with the rod tip, and the whole idea of the bait is to be walking the dog like this, going back and forth. It's particularly a great action for smallmouth bass. I've caught plenty of largemouths on this as well, but smallmouths in particularly seem to not be able to handle that walk the dog type of retrieve, and so it really shines for smallmouths. And these baits are great for stripers as well. There's a number of modifications that I do to the standard Zara Spook. The most important of which is when you get this out of the package, it comes with this kind of hardware on it. You see how there's two screws and a little piece of hardware here, same thing on the bottom, and it won't allow for complete freedom of movement of this hook. It'll hang up because it's not fully. It's not like it would be if it was on a split ring. Same thing here. Look, I can't even go any further than that with this hook on the back. And that's a problem, because if you get a big fish on and that hook doesn't move freely, they can wedge their mouths right off of it while they're fighting. And so that leads to the first modification, which is what I do with this bait is I take these off, and I have a whole video where I go into complete detail about how I do this mod. I'll put a link to it up here so that you can see that video in case you have a Zara Spook that you'd like to mod. It does not affect the action of the bait, but it certainly will land you more fish. And it's one of my most watched videos, so I would encourage you to watch it. Let me show you what it looks like when the mod is done. So, unmodified lure, modified bait. All I do is I take these pieces of hardware off, and in the center of that hardware I go in with a eye bolt, a little eye bolt. I put glue on the bolt so that when it goes in there it's glued in, it's never coming out. I put a split ring on the eye bolt, and I always change out the standard stock hooks with number 2 Gamakatsu EWG hooks. That's very important to get this bait fishing, improving better than the original. You can see where those hooks lie. I'm holding the baits equally here, and the bait is not thrown off of balance because the hooks are in the exact same place. So it makes for the modification just makes it a whole much better lure to fish, and it's easy to modify. Watch that video that I put up in the link. It's an easy thing to do. Another thing that I'll sometimes do is I'll add decal eyes to make it look a little more realistic. Sometimes I'll use a feather tail, like on this guy. Before we get a whole lot further though, you should know that if you have some spooks that have been around a while, take a look at the Zara Spooks that you have. I have tons of them, all different colors, and I really like the bait. I always had an interest in this bait for some reason. But this one is a special Zara Spook, and if you'll notice, that color is really beautiful, isn't it? It's a nice perch color. It says Charlie Campbell on here. Charlie Campbell is a famous fisherman, really well known for topwater, and he had his signature series, Charlie Campbell Zara Spooks. And this bait is a bait that you may not want to fish if you own it, because being a signature series, it's a collector's item, and it's worth quite a bit more money than just a standard spook. The last I checked on these, they were selling anywhere between $40 and $80. So, and that was a few years back already, so they may be going for more than that now. So if you have Charlie Campbell Signature Series spooks, you may want to hold them, but don't modify them. Keep them as the original, because they have some value to them, and that value will only increase over time. So what colors do I like? I haven't modified this one yet, but I gotta tell you, I like this color. I don't see many spooks this color anymore. I just don't, and it's a really nice color. This is a bone colored spook. It's always one of my go-tos. It's just a really good color overall. If I have very clear water conditions and spooky fish, and the water is rather still, I like to use a clear Zara Spook. They have a real hard time getting a look at this, but they certainly can see something's making a commotion on the surface, and this could be a very good fish catcher at times. This is one that a lot of people don't throw, but in certain lakes and certain environments, this gold with the black back is a smallmouth killer, and so this is one that I always have available and ready to go. And last but not least, I have this is what they call an old G-finish spook. It's got a blue back, pinkish sides, and then it's got that shiny light colored belly, and I have a feather tail on it. And I'm not sure why, and I put these eyes on it too. You can see the decal eyes that I put on there. I'm not sure why this is, but this bait has done very well for me at night under lighted docks. So this is one of my lures that I like to throw around docks that are lit up at night for smallmouth bass specifically. Caught a lot of smallmouths on this color under lighted docks. There's something about the way this thing shines under those lights that the fish really like, and I've caught quite a few on it that way. So walk the dog, standard retrieve, let's talk about that. Talk about rod, reel a little bit as well. I like to use a topwater type of rod for this. It's a bait caster. It's got a fast tip, not the heaviest rod in the world, because you want the fish to be able to grab that bait, suck it in before you get a good hook into them. And so you need a rod that's got a decent tip to it, and about a medium action rod is good for this. If you have, whatever rod you like to buy, look for one that's specifically set up for top waters and or jerkbait fishing, and you'll be having the right action of the rod. The reel, I like 6.1 to 1 gear ratio, maybe up to a 7.1 to 1 gear ratio. Something in that range seems to be a good ratio for fishing the bait. And the retrieve that seems to work the best overall is just a standard cadence where you're just walking that dog and you just keep the bait coming. You just keep it moving the entire time. Just whoop, whoop, whoop. You can change that speed, but when I first fish this bait, I almost always throw it that way, where I'm just throwing it and bringing it back at a standard steady pace. I just entirely through the entire retrieve. I catch more fish that way on the spook than any other way. And it's also, I have some friends who like to use these baits to striper fish at night, and they claim that cadence, that retrieve, works best on most nights. Now the fish, they change through different days and different times, and depending on the mood they're in, depending on what conditions are going on, but day in and day out, that's a very good retrieve for striper fishing at night as well. A couple other retrieves, you can vary the speed of that walk the dog up to very fast or very slow. When you walk the dog very slow with this, it has a very wide swing back and forth, and sometimes they like that wide swing. And when you go fast, it has a much tighter swing, but it's going much faster, so it looks like it's a frenzy along the top trying to get away. And then anything in between those two extremes can work. The other way is you can have this bait where you walk the dog 1, 2, 3 and stop and let it sit for a little bit, a few seconds. 1, 2, stop, let it sit, and you can work the bait that way. And sometimes the fish prefer that retrieve as well. So some different retrieves that you can try. I like to fish this bait on braided line, typically 20-pound test braid, but I almost always use a monofilament leader with that braid, a 17-pound test monofilament leader, about the length of the rod, maybe a little longer. And the reason why I like the monofilament is because it floats. So I would use monofilament as a leader, but not fluoro. And the reason why I don't like fluoro is because fluoro has a tendency to sink, and sometimes it can sink underneath the bait and it can hang up on the hook. Also, it just doesn't seem to work the bait as well when the line is underneath the water, whereas the monofilament would just float on the surface. So it will allow the bait to work a little bit better as well. The other thing you could do if you were fishing at night or if you're fishing the lure fast is just tie it straight to braid. But you have to know that if you're doing that, sometimes what will happen is you can pull the bait out of the fish's mouth because there's no stretch in that braid whatsoever, and they may hit it, and if you pull it too quick, they might not get a good hold of it. So it's another reason why I like to use that not a real stiff rod, but then also that shock absorbing monofilament leader, which stretches quite a bit, and it just seems to be the right combination to let the fish get a hold of the bait before you get a good hook set into the fish. Well, if you haven't tried the Zara Spook, I encourage you to try it. If you have and you haven't fished it recently, this bait is interesting in that it's an old bait. It's been around a long time, but a lot of other baits came out that walk the dog, and I think people got away from fishing these things, and so now the fish maybe haven't seen them so much anymore, which makes it a more dangerous bait than it's been maybe in years past. So give the bait a shot. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know how you fish it, what modifications you might do. Don't forget to comment. And let me know what you fish it for, whether you think it's better for smallmouth versus largemouth bass. I'm interested in hearing all those. Would love to have those conversations in the comments with everyone. If you like the video, give me the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about it. Get them subscribing as well if you can. We're all about the art and science of fishing, especially bass fishing. And as always, may God bless your fishing endeavors.